Close on the
Wow.
29th, and we move on the 7th.
I would like to call 5:30, a little earlier, and we have a limited time frame, so I think we will adjust as needs to be. We have to be out by 6, correct? Correct. Excellent. Okay, if we'd have a call of order, please. Roll call.
Carolyn Witt,
Here.
Steve Struberg,
Here.
Brian Bogue,
Here.
Rick Hopp,
Here.
Danielle Grotwheel, Jamie Holtmeyer,
Here.
Andrew Clary,
Here.
Bridget Kelch, Joe Holtmeyer, Mark Hydrich, Greg Scornia,
Here.
Sal Maniaci,
Here.
Tom Nelden.
Okay, if you'd all please rise to the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I hope everyone perused the minutes. We haven't had a meeting in a while, so it's been a while. If you've read the minutes, if I have any additions or corrections, if not, a motion.
I'll motion.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second. I'll move.
Okay, Rick seconded. He
Rick's
beat
got
you.
it.
He
He
beat
got
you.
it.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, new business. Landmark, Phase 3, final public hearing.
Yeah.
We're in the
so-
home stretch.
As everyone knows, this is our requirement of our grant, to have a public hearing before and at the end. But this is not only just our end of our survey, this is the end of our all 3 phases. So Katie with Landmarks is here to go over the whole thing.
And thank you for making the trip out. At least it was a nice day.
It was, yeah.
Hot, but nice.
It is very hot, but it's all right. So here for phase 3. I was also here for phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 3, this is an overall all phases,
Here, I
but
can pull that up too.
so this is phase 3. The area outlined here, below the International Shoe Factory, and it covered 141 properties. We condensed it to like 131 survey forms though, because I consolidated the apartment complex on the southern side just because they're all pretty much the same building, so they're on one form. For phase 3, we had 89 contributing and 113 non-contributing. So not fantastic if we were gonna list it on its own, but it's not on its own, it's with phase 1 and phase 2. With this one, this section here, only kind of the northern portion, the northwestern portion was kind of identified as being constructed in correlation with the factory, whereas the Stafford, the eastern side, was kind of constructed prior. It existed, a lot of them are earlier buildings, earlier brick buildings, and are already listed in the Stafford Olive Historic District. There were some factory workers that lived there, and there were some scattered throughout, but not as heavily as like phase 2 or phase 1, which are concentrated closer to the factory because people walked for the most part to get there. This area was also kind of developed a lot later than the rest, as you guys may or may not know. High and Stafford were in existence since at least 1860 something, since the Bird's Eye map, as main thoroughfares, with Horn and James coming later, and Frank not platted until like 1929. It was more of like a gravel walk through. But a lot of the homes here, as you can see listed, are kind of frame 1.5 dwellings. There weren't really any commercial buildings, institutional, industrial, anything like that. There was one commercial on the corner of James and High, which is the northwest corner, which was a grocery store for a very hot minute. It didn't last very long, and then it became a residence. So, as you can see, most of them were, homes and dwellings. We've had a lot of buildings that have been altered, so hence a lot of the non-contributing, and a lot of buildings too were built past the period of significance, which was established as the factory operation, so like 1907 to 1960. A lot of these in like the core area were built in like the 1980s to 90s. So they, of course, can't be contributing in this at all. You can see the rest on the front page of this, of what goes into phase 3. And at the bottom is just kind of the resource count, and it's broken down into primary buildings, so that's like your house, and secondary buildings, which is like your garage, shed, things like that. And then a structure, there aren't any in this one. And then sites, there are 5 vacant lots that were surveyed into this, which the majority of them were never really a lot identified on their own. They were like someone's backyard that have now been parceled out as a separate lot. So most of them have always been vacant for the most part, and never really had a building on it. The only one that I was unclear on was the one on Frank, off the corner of Frank and James. I think it's, I can't read that far, but 175 maybe. That one, since Frank was developed so late, and there were no addresses indicated in that area, I considered that as to be always vacant because there was no indication of anything being there during the period of significance. The second page kind of goes over all of the phases of development. When they were constructed in correlation to the factory development. So you can see a lot of them were, built as the factory grew, primarily like from the 1920s to 1940s. This phase 3, was like 1910 to 1940. And then on the third page are the recommendations that I kind of came up with at the end of this. So, as I mentioned, there's Stafford Olive Historic District. This doesn't have to be followed through, but if someone wants to do it in the future, it would be a short thing, is just reconcile properties that have been altered since the listing of the district. There were many that were kind of altered, not many, that were altered on the western side of Stafford. There was like a brick dwelling that has had its front entrance relocated and has been clad in stucco since, that was maybe done in like 2013. So it's no longer contributing. And some have been demolished and some have just been altered. The second nomination would be the potential National Register nomination of a standalone district, just of the shoe factory. I think that would be pretty strong. It would kind of follow any other of the international or just shoe factory nominations. And it also maintains a lot of its architectural features. The third nomination would be the potential nomination of a shoe factory neighborhood district. And the other map, which is on the screen right now, is kind of what we developed as the potential boundary line for a potential National Register district. It took a while, and we went over at least 5 different suggested boundaries. But this is the one that we kind of finally came up with, just because it is the most consolidated area with the most contributing contiguous buildings. There's not as many gaps. There's like whole street blocks that have contributing buildings, and a lot of the area, as we know, was developed due to the factory. We thought about going further south, staying in like the core central area, at least going to James, but there were some gaps in there, and there were some buildings that have been demolished or newer buildings in there. So we decided just to keep it more consolidated as an easier boundary line that we could test as an area. And everything in there that is highlighted green are the buildings that are contributing. Further south, there were some non-determined buildings, but since they're not in the boundary line, I don't have them highlighted on this map. I suggested maybe 2 buildings that could be listed individually that aren't within this proposed boundary line. They're on 5th Street. They're both, okay examples of craftsmen. I'm not sure if the 905 would be listed individually. I don't know if they would accept it, but it was one of the buildings within Phase 3 that looked pretty good. The state can be kind of picky, though, on how stringent they are on high style that they want versus a more kind of relaxed craftsman bungalow. The other one, though, I thought was interesting because not only for architecture, but of the person's not hugely prominent, but he was interesting for this area because he built several buildings along with like a factory warehouse for the shoe factory within the area, and he built, I think, his own home, and that's 821 West 5th Street for H.H. Bushmeyer. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Is that the one at,
It's the green tile roof at the corner of 5th
Yes.
and High.
right?
Evans is doing the
right.
landscaping there now,
'Cause
Yeah, he's
Esther,
fixing it up right now. He's doing some soffit work the last time when I surveyed.
I think before the current owners, one of the original Bushmeyers, the daughter,
Oh.
granddaughter, was still living there. I delivered Meals on Wheels,
Yeah,
and she was living in like 3 rooms on the first floor, but it was amazing. It's one of those people that slips through the cracks that you wish you had sat down and talked to, and, you know.
it's an interesting house. Once again, I asked the SHPO if, I'm dealing with a different SHPO person, if,
Yeah, they've got new staff.
yeah. The person before was kind of shot down a lot of my individual suggestion. This person didn't make any comment, so it would have to be proposed first, and they'd have to see before anything would go through, because the windows on this have been altered, not all of them, but I think some primary windows have been altered. I know the windows in the garage have been altered, in the garage door, but they aren't as stringent on garages,
No,
so.
I'd love to see that roof worked on. They recently did,
Yeah, they redid the
Fascia,
soffit on it,
yeah,
yeah,
and
the
the
fascia board and
soffit.
soffit, yeah.
so it's looking better. And they did landscaping, which is also,
Okay, I hadn't seen all that. When I went around, I think there was a storm, so there were a lot
yeah,
of tree limbs that were down.
This has been pretty recent.
Yeah.
But, thank you. This is such a humongous amount of work. And really, it's much better to have a consolidated area that has a better chance than try and, expand it too big.
Yeah.
Um,
And then there was a lot of deliberation just because it is a worker town. And so, as I was telling Sal, like, there's not as many high-style buildings. Meaning there's not as many, like, high-style construction materials. And so over time, things change more often. And so that's why we have a lot of non-contributing buildings, because there have been a lot of vinyl salesmen and new
yes.
windows. But it happens, and I think this is more of the development around the factory development of it, like the area as a worker area.
Are there any questions? I have,
Thanks again.
yeah, I do have a question. I was at some workshop, I think it was the CLG workshop, and I was wondering, do you think you would be willing to come back sometime if we try and have an open house and invite the residents for them to see this, because they saw you, they saw the pictures, somebody was doing stuff. I don't know whether we'll be able to follow through on that, because we're not really good at that, but I think it would be really neat if we could get that, if they had an interest to see what was compiled,
Sure.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, thank
If
you.
you let me
Don't-
know what they want,
don't-
what you want, and I
Yeah,
can always
don't
compile
hold
that.
your breath, but
It's always, yeah, if there's an interest. I maybe had 2 people talk to me
Yeah.
throughout this whole time. One lady was great, and she grew up in the neighborhood, and her father was
Armateur?
Yeah.
Yes.
So she was great, but she was the only person that really, out of all 3 phases, kind of talked to me.
Right.
So, but yeah, it'd be interesting.
Well, it's very hard to get them motivated unless you're, gonna do something really wicked and then they show up. But if you just want to share, but anyway, that's in the possibilities.
Okay, just let me know.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and it's been great dealing with the same people throughout this process. It really, has been painless for us. We just sit here and look hopefully interested, and thank you
Well, it's-
so much for all the effort.
The history that, it's been, I guess, 3 years that I've been on this board that you've uncovered and shared with us has been phenomenal, so thank you. Does it help or hurt you to have a smaller district? That was the one question I have, and I'm trying to be cognizant
I
of our
think
time
it
tonight.
helps make a stronger one.
Okay.
This is the district boundary that I came up with my boss, my executive director. When working with Allison, I had one that continued all the way down to phase 3. It was stronger. It was not stronger per se, it just had more buildings
Bigger,
in it. It was just bigger. I also had it continue down to James Street, which kind of followed a boundary line that was suggested in the 1992 survey. Same thing, it was just, more buildings. It still worked out in favor. There were still more contributing in a way than there were non-contributing. But I think the smaller kind of works in its favor. As I was saying, there's more contributing together. Because you can't, in the past, you could kind of gerrymander a boundary line and go around properties that weren't not contributing. So you're like, I'm just going to ignore it. You can't do that now. They don't want that. They want it kind of to follow street lines, or like a clear-cut property line. So this kind of helps it in a way because it's just a stronger representation. And because the further south you get, I don't know if you can see on the map, there's kind of along Rand, the houses were built a little later, late 1950s to 60s, and then you also have a larger new duplex that I believe there was a parking garage or a parking lot
That
there.
was the city shed,
Yeah. And
once upon a time.
and then
have a
this section around
We had a shed.
the section around Stafford, Roberts, Johnson, and Third is not very strong either. There was one primary contributing building, and the rest were 1980s.
Yeah.
So it's harder because the further south you go, the further you get away from a core downtown area in a way, and so newer construction.
Makes sense. Thank you again.
Do you need a motion to put this in the record, or?
No.
And okay, well, we can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you guys, and let me know when you want me back.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, further under new business, what is the next procedure with this?
We had to wait a full year before we can even apply for the district, so it'll be in the 2021 budget. We'll apply for the grant to get it nominated, so.
Okay, terrific, so we just sit on this for?
Yeah, I don't know why they make you sit on it, but they do, so it's gotta be,
Okay.
we can't apply for it until a year after you submit it.
Okay,
So, but just quickly, for September 25th, we have the State Historic Preservation Office coming to town to do our evaluation for our CLG. It's a certified local government. We have to be one of those in order to receive grants. And so I know Carolyn said she'd be available if anyone else would like to be available. It's 11 to 1:30, I believe, on that day. I'm not entirely sure what it all entails because I have not sat through one of those yet. They do it every 3 years, I believe.
Yeah, and she said it should be just maybe around an hour.
Okay.
I didn't think it would be much longer than an hour.
So they just, I'll find out more, but if you're available that day, I think it'd be nice to have a good showing. We'll probably meet here, and then if she wants to go off-site.
Here?
Yeah, we'll meet here, and then if he wants to go off-site for lunch or something, we'll do that, so.
What time was it again?
I have it on 11 to 1:30 is on my calendar, but, or maybe it's 11 to 12:30. Hold on, September.
I will be there.
Oh, it is 11 to 12:30, an hour and a half.
excellent, thank you. That's great, and I made a copy of that, and I'm counting on Jamie at having a lot of and you to have a lot of the information to.
Right, we'll make sure beforehand that we have everything.
That we have all the.
I have it in my calendar to start pulling that stuff.
Excellent, excellent. Because looking at this, I think we cover most of these bases.
Right. No, I'm not worried about it. We just need to make sure we have a good showing and we have everything, so.
Okay. Well, if anyone can attend, you'll be, Jamie will send out a reminder when we get closer. And we can tempt you with lunch.
All right. Okay, so, sorry, I'm just going to move
No,
on because we have 10
go
minutes.
ahead.
This is the other items on here we did do via email. The reason this one, we did it via email, but they are going to be submitting an application for the small TIF. And so this will be in a more official capacity with mandatory review, mandatory compliance.